And hello, everyone. Welcome to another Trading Tech Talk. My name is Daniel Cynic, and I will be your host today. And in fact, we are super excited to host this event. You have no idea how long we've been waiting to finally have a tech talk on the indicator that we believe will change everything. So super excited to get started with this. But before we start, please let me ask you a question. Where are you calling in from? So I'm calling in from our beautiful office here in Montreal, in Canada. Please put in your Q&A box, where are you guys calling in from? Who do we have? Please put it into the Q&A box of your Zoom window. Let me see. All right, Mike from Bakersfield, California. Hey, Mike, how's it going? Gregory, how are you from Idaho? Leonard from South Carolina. Zerman from Atlanta. Klaus from Italy. Hi, Klaus. How are you? Alexis from France. David from Delaware. Don from Durham, North Carolina, I believe. Michael from New York City. James from Wisconsin. Volker from Göttingen, Deutschland, Germany. Nice. Chris from Northern California. Larry Baltimore. Keith from West Palm Beach. Christian from another German guy from Germany. Eric from Zion National Park, wherever that might be. Brett from California, Steve from Arkansas. Wow, what an amazing crowd from all over the world. Super exciting. So thank you guys so much for sharing your location. And Ryan from Atlanta. All right, guys. So let's get into it. Now, first off, as I mentioned in the very beginning, thank you so much for joining us today. We know your time is precious, and taking time out of your busy lives to hear me speak, to hear Nicholas speak, who's going to come on a bit later, means the world to us. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And for those of you who are not familiar with us, who perhaps see me now on picture for the very first time, let me quickly introduce myself and let me introduce ourselves. So we are tradingindicators.com. As mentioned, my name is Daniel Cynic. I'm the guy here on the left-hand side. And about 10 years ago, we have created tradingindicators.com together with Homa, who's also on the webinar today in the middle. Now, this is 10 years ago. And over the years, we have built almost 1,000 indicators, so 750 indicators and counting more for clients all over the world. But what I will show you today is in all these years, this indicator I'm going to show you today is by far the most sophisticated and I'd say advanced one, which we have vetted and tested and retested and optimized over and over again until we have reached a point where we were truly happy with it. Well, it gave us the performance that we wanted it to have. And then we thought it is time to, schedule this tech talk and show it to you guys. And this is why we are all here today. And not to mention, we also have Nicholas with us here today. Nicholas is the lead developer of tradingindicators.com. He joined us about 5 years ago, and he's been instrumental in many of our latest innovations. Now, most of what we do is rooted in what is called technical analysis, which is basically a pattern analysis of your price chart. We believe that fundamental information is almost immediately priced in. And by doing a technical information of your chart, you will indirectly also take into account fundamental information. We also believe that trading should be simple. And in fact, trading is simple, but you need to use the right tool. And what you're going to see today is a tool which will simplify one particular aspect of trading by a big degree. We're going to get to this in a second. And of course, this webinar, guys, is for you. So if you have any questions, don't be shy. The more the merrier. Please put your questions into the Q&A box, and we're going to get to those as we continue through this webinar. And one last thing before we really get into it, a quick reminder that trading does contain substantial risk and therefore is not suited for every investor. If you trade, make sure to only use risk capital, which you can actually afford to lose. When it comes to backtest performance or hypothetical performance, keep in mind that this is not necessarily indicative of future performance, and any trade ideas and setups discussed during this or in this webinar should not be construed as trade advice. These are for educational purposes only. All right. Now, One last thing, this session is being recorded and the recording will be sent to you shortly after the webinar. So if you have to drop off, don't worry, you will get the recording afterwards. Now, what do we have planned for today? Well, we're gonna start off with talking about trading with volume profiles. So let me ask you a question, guys. Who of you have heard about or perhaps used a volume profile in your trading approach? If you've done, please put a 1 into the Q&A box if you have used a volume profile in the past. So let me have a quick look. Leonard did, David did, Jury did, Klaus did, Robert, Zerman, Richard. Okay, so, lots of clients have used volume profiles. Awesome. Okay, so, but if you have used it in your trading, you probably will agree with me that, it perhaps is a bit more of a complex indicator, and the interpretation of it might be, a little bit more advanced. So we're going to start off by leveling the playing field and talking about volume profiles in general. Then, topic number 2 is we're going to discuss our brand new indicator, which we termed Volume IQ. There'll be time for a special offer. And of course, at the end, we have plenty of time for Q&A and live charts and actually some real trade examples that we have taken using our Volume IQ indicator. All right, guys. So with this, and without further ado, I'm going to pass on the word to Nicholas. He's going to walk with us through trading with volume profiles. I'm going to come on just a bit later. So Nicholas, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Awesome. So Nicholas, please take it away. Share your screen and show us how you understand volume profiles and what you deem important when it comes to volume profiles.
For sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so like Daniel mentioned, volume profiles, a lot of traders use them and most traders have heard of them. You might not have used one though. They're one of the most well-known kinds of trading indicators out there, really because they're useful for all traders and in all contexts, whether you're a day trader or a swing trader, so long as the chart has volume, it can really help you in your decision making. But the thing is, they're very advanced. A lot of volume profiles can be pretty complicated indicators, and probably the most complicated thing about them is knowing how or when to trade with them, how to best trade with them or interpret them. I remember when I first saw a volume profile, I applied it to my charts. I kind of watched it a bit and then I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with this, and I got rid of it. So let's just go through the basics of what is a volume profile so we're all on a level playing field here. A brief explanation of one is that it's basically a histogram, which is like a sideways bar chart, and you can see it right here. This is like the most simple kind of volume profile you're ever going to see and the most simple appearance of one. And every single one of the bars in the histogram is lined up with different price levels on the chart. Like these bars right here are probably around 200, 205, or 195 or something like that. And the bigger the bars are, the more volume has been traded at that level over a look back period. So maybe this volume profile is looking back for the last 500 bars, and it might have found that, hey, at this level right here, maybe around 250, this was the level that had the most volume traded. That's why it has the biggest bar. Each bar is a measure of the volume traded. And what traders usually get from them is that there's a lot of volume being traded in certain areas or little volume traded in other areas. So traders might leverage this information to make observations like, hey, on this chart, most people don't seem to be buying up here. I know price hasn't really been up there for very long, but it seems like all of the trading activity has happened down here. And then a trader might take that observation and say, hey, I'm not going to buy on this chart until price comes back to where the big money seems to be buying or where everybody seems to be buying. I'm going to wait to get an entry down there. I'm not buying up here when nobody really seems to be biting. And that volume profile we saw there before, that's like the most simple kind of volume profile, right? The big thing they're going to be able to take away from it is that there are high volume nodes and low volume nodes. These are the spots, like I mentioned, where there's lots of trading volume, and these are the ones where there isn't much trading volume. And you can go a little bit of a step further. And I think if you've used a volume profile, you've probably already seen this. This is probably the most common step up or advanced version of a volume profile. And what's happening here on this profile, this histogram, is you can see each bar has two different colors. And the green portion of the bar represents the amount of buying volume that was done at that bar, or the estimated amount of buying volume. And the red portion is the estimated amount of selling volume. And then what traders will do is, by visually looking at these levels, they'll be able to gauge, hey, there might be a little bit of a selling or bearish bias, let's say at these levels, because we can see at these 4 consecutive levels, the red portion of the bar is bigger. More traders are selling there. And up here, on these 3 bars or these 2 bars, the green portion of the bars is bigger. So there was more buying volume. So what we might deduce from this is, if price comes up to here and we're down here, hey, historically, people seem to be selling up there. So if I'm long, if I own shares of this, once we come up to there, maybe I'm going to consider selling and taking my profit, because historically, that's where sellers seem to be coming in and pressuring the market, right? So what do traders attempt to use this information for? So I've already kind of touched on some of it, but probably the main things are finding areas of volume and resistance, or key levels. So these are the areas where we called them high volume nodes, where there's lots of volume. So if price, let's say, is at $100 a share, and we see that there's a very high volume node at $120 a share, well, we might think, hey, that might be resistance because we're below that price, and that's where a lot of volume is. So once we get up there, maybe people are going to start selling. And traders will also look at levels below price that have high volume and say, hey, maybe there's a lot of support there if there's a bunch of volume below us. And similarly, at low volume nodes, let's say you own a share and it's $100 a share and it starts dropping down to 90. And at $90, there's a low volume node. There's no trading there. Well, I'm probably going to think, hey, that's not support because nobody's stepping in to trade there. So that might be, a bearish indication. So traders will combine all of these observations and they'll try to get an expectation of price behavior based on what has happened historically. And basically that's the story that's being told by a volume profile. It's telling you where trading tends to happen. And then on top of all this, traders are going to combine this info and they're going to basically use it to try and make logical, reason-based trades, right? Why are you using an indicator? Well, you're using it to try and give yourself confidence or give yourself more data to find good places to enter, exit, set your targets, and set your stops and so forth. However, I think you can probably already tell it's really not that simple, especially with volume profiles. There's a lot of nuance with volume profiles. Just because a level has a bunch of volume, well, that doesn't really tell me just that amount of information. If that's support, if that's resistant, if it's neither, right? There's so many things you have to be considering and which are often missed because these are complex indicators. So let's take a look at an example here, a chart, and try to figure out, okay, how can we pick apart this volume profile and analyze it manually to see if maybe we can come up with a plan for a trade just based on the info here? Because I think most traders, when they see a volume profile, they don't really know what to make of it. And there's so many different ways to interpret it. So first of all, remember, by looking at each of these bars, if there's more red or if there's more green, we can come to the conclusion that at that level, like this one, for example, you can clearly tell there's more red than green. There's a sell bias, right? And this level, this is a zoomed in version of this volume profile. Price is right here. That zoomed in area is up here. So I might be able to make the conclusion that, hey, a lot of traders are selling up here because all of the bars in this histogram show that there's more selling volume than buying volume up there. And down here, well, we might be able to deduce, hey, there's a bunch of volume and there's way more green than red. So traders like to buy down here. So maybe if I'm looking to buy this stock, maybe I would like to be buying down here because that's where everybody else is buying. And look, we're above that price, right? That's a good thing. That might be a sign of support. And we can go a step further, and we kind of already did, is we can make larger, higher level conclusions, right? Not only do we notice that at certain bars, like this one, is there more selling than buying volume, or at this bar, there's more buying than selling volume, but we can notice a pattern where maybe there's 5 or 6 consecutive bars that have a bunch of selling volume, or 5 or 6 that have a bunch of buying volume. And we can group these into, larger zones and figure out that, maybe this is a big area of support. Maybe this is a big area of resistance above price or around here. The next thing that traders, or that we can take from this chart, and which you will be doing often, you've probably heard of this term, it's called a point of control if you've ever used a volume profile, is volume profiles tell us what are the significant and contested zones on the chart. Where is the most trading volume happening? Where are traders finding value? Or what might be the turning point on a chart? This level right here on this chart where the volume profile juts out is very obviously the kind of line in the sand for traders as the most important place to focus on this chart. This is where traders seem to be very active. When price comes down into that range, something's happening because volume's flying in. And then you might be able to make a conclusion like, hey, if we break below this, well, that's very bearish, right? Because that's where all the trading's been happening. And now it's no longer beneath us. Now it's above us. And you might have heard the terms before where, support becomes resistance once it's broken, or resistance becomes support when it's broken to the upside. So taking all of this now into consideration from the volume profile, we also then need to kind of be aware of what's happening in the long term on the chart, in the context of the chart. And on this chart, for example, not only do we know that, hey, beneath us, there is a focal point, right? The zone of control. And not only is it a zone of control, but there's more buying volume than selling volume down there. To me, that sounds like support. We also see that price is in between two areas where there's a lot of selling. We then need to combine that with the high level of the chart, right? This chart is in an uptrend. And with all that information combined, we kind of have a bigger picture story of what's happening on the chart. And we can combine this kind of macro level context with the volume profile to come up with a trade idea. So yes, so most importantly, we can make conclusions based on this info to then help us make a trade. And let's take a look at how we might do that here with the chart we just saw. Well, we made four main observations, right? We saw, hey, high level sentiment is bullish. This is the kind of the context, the story of the chart before we had the volume profile. Number two, we saw prices above this important area. Number three, that important area down here, the nearest one, around 2,800, has a bunch of buying volume. And number four, right now, price is surrounded by areas where people like to sell. So how can we combine all that into a trade idea? So if you were up here, looking at this chart here without the volume profile, you might think, hey, we're in an uptrend. This might be a good place to buy. And you don't have the full story, right? But with this volume profile, I would assume this probably isn't the smartest place to be buying. You might want to buy once it comes down to the lower trend line, but the volume profile is showing us, look right there, actually, it lines up with the trend line. I didn't even notice that. Once price comes down to that level, traders sell a lot. So it actually might not be a good time to buy here. Even though the bias is bullish, traders don't seem to be willing to buy up here. So a smart takeaway we can take from this volume profile, is the smart idea might be to wait for price to come all the way down here and buy in. And if we did do that, so let's go back here. So the conclusion we came up with here, combining all this info, is if price, it's not a good time to buy right now, even though we're bullish, overall bullish, it's kind of not too wise to be buying. Instead, it would be smart to start buying down here if price came down there. So our plan might be to enter in this area around 2,800. And like I mentioned, if we went below this, that would be pretty bearish. So if we're buying here, if we go below, we'll stop out. So maybe we'll set a stop loss around 20,770. We'll buy around 20,800, and then maybe we'll set our target, somewhere where people like to sell. So we're kind of betting it's going to drop and then bounce. And in that case there, the volume profile did give a good story, just our manual analysis. This line right here, the time of analysis, this is when we were looking at the chart. So if we rewound back to there, that was right at this point in time. And look what happened. Exactly what we kind of were able to tell from the story of the volume profile. It started selling down through the 20,800s, through these areas where we already knew that historically that's where people like to sell. So we might have been able to had some confidence in predicting that. And price dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped until when? Until right when it entered in to that zone of control, the contested area, 20,800. And our little trade plan there was we wanted to go long down here because we saw historically there's more buying than selling when price comes down here. This is when people are thinking, hey, this contract or this stock is a good deal right now. down at this level. That's why there's more buying volume. And if we did that, we placed our stop loss like we were theorizing beneath that area, hey, it would have been a good trade. Came down, it hit that, and it bounced. So what I'm trying to say is the volume profile does tell a story of the chart, and it always does, because volume is a fact, and you can't deny what has happened historically.
Awesome. Yeah, Niklas, great introduction to what volume profiles can be used for and how powerful they can be if, and it's a big if, analyzed properly. But perhaps you agree with me. We give you all this information right now with analyzing where is more buying, where's more selling, where is the focal point of control, what is the overall sentiment. But you know what? To me, that seemed like a lot of manual work and tedious work. And especially if markets are moving fast, perhaps that's something which you cannot afford to do all this tedious analysis. And when we looked at volume profiles, we had the exact same conclusion. Oh boy, in order to use them, there's a lot of investigation and work needed to make sense of them. Now, and this gets even worse because they change all the time. A couple of bars later, as more volume rolls in, the volume profile may look a bit differently. So do you have to redo analysis at this point? Perhaps you do. Now, to combine all this, and you probably can conclude that, wow, this is a lot of manual work, and that's too much for me. Too much for me and my trading. Because me as a trader, I want to focus on what really matters, on making the final trading decision. I don't want to keep analyzing and reanalyzing volume profile histograms. It's too tedious. So we thought to ourselves, and this dates back about a year, man, there must be something better out there. So we researched it. We looked on TradingView, we looked on other platform. As it turns out, there was no volume profile which did the work that we wanted it to do. So us being software engineers, there was only one conclusion from this. We rolled up our sleeves and we started coding. And we have started coding a volume profile indicator, which does exactly what we wanted it to do. And it's exactly the analysis that we wanted it to do, eliminating all that tedious groundwork. And once again, this is so important because as a trader, we want to have a clear mind, not a cluttered mind. We want to be fresh to make a good trading decision. And this is exactly where our brand new indicator comes in, which we termed Volume IQ. Because as you will see, this indicator does it almost all for you. And how this works and what this indicator brings to the table and what we spent our last 12 months with, you probably may have wondered, hey, what are these guys doing? It's been so quiet. Well, now you know. Introducing, guys, Volume IQ. So Niklas, please take it over again and show us what this indicator can do.
Sure. Okay. So introducing Volume IQ. Now, the idea with this indicator is that all that technical analysis we did, all of the thinking about the chart, it's going to do all that for you. It's going to do the storytelling of the volume profile for you and present it on the chart. So some of the things it does here, it identifies those buy and sell biases. So if you remember, we were looking and seeing, hey, is there more buying or selling at a level? It's going to do that for you. It's then going to combine all of these levels and find those larger zones or areas where there seems to be buying or selling pressure. We call these block biases. It also combines the profile with the entire chart context. And we have like a self-optimizing, kind of like our AO indicators, algorithm that's always trying to figure out what is the best reading on the directional bias. It's got a zone of control highlighting. You'll see in a sec just very nice gradient visuals that make reading a volume profile super simple and intuitive. And then finally, it calculates all this pretty much instantly on any time frame. And as you'll see, any asset type that has volume, any market. But most importantly, these are just kind of the base of the cake. The best thing it does is that it takes all of this information and gives you what we call trade action zones. So these are interpretations of all that info, the context of the chart, the different high volume, low volume nodes, where price is in relation to these nodes, all that stuff together. And then this is the brains of the indicator. It's going to give you trading action zones, which are areas on the chart that have suggested behavior for you to take. Maybe sell here. Maybe this would be a good entry. Maybe that would be a good add, or this a good place to place a stop. And all this stuff in conjunction, you're going to see very intuitive and it works very well. So what I want to do now is we're going to jump back to the example we did. right? The manual one we did with that example chart. And just so you know, that was actually it's an NQ, that was NASDAQ contracts, I think on the 5-minute chart. And we're gonna go step by step and see how everything we did, Volume IQ is just gonna do it for you, and it's gonna do it for you in 1 second. And the same conclusion we came to about finding that good spot to buy, that spot to place our stop loss, place to place our target, all that is going to be immediately readable. It's going to tell the story of the chart, and we're going to find that same trade just without having to do any thinking, basically. So let's start off here with just a base volume profile like we had before, right? The histogram and the buy and sell volume split apart. Now, the first thing that Volume IQ is going to do is you're not going to have to do any guesswork anymore. And I think if you've used a volume profile before, you know, we were talking about finding if there's more buying volume or selling volume at a level. I was amazed at I actually couldn't find one on TradingView, at least a free one, that even told me what is the bias at each level. I mean, here it's obvious that there's more selling volume than buying volume, right? And what Volume IQ does is it puts these squares here on the side that immediately tell you if there's a sell bias, a buy bias, or if it seems to be about even, it's neutral. I couldn't find an indicator that even did this. So you're always basically guessing. I understand it probably doesn't matter when it's neutral, but still, that should be there. So the first thing it's going to do is tell you this individual price level bias. And the next thing it does is it's going to find out where is there a significant number of consecutive levels with the same bias, kind of like we did with drawing those circles there. So are there a bunch of sell levels in a row? Well, it's going to group these together and it's going to highlight them, and you're going to be able to tell, hey, this is a block with sell pressure. This is a block that's neutral. There doesn't really seem to be a bias one way or another. And then down here, well, this is where traders seem to be really buying and stepping in with buying volume. So this is going to be super easy and done right for you. The next thing it does that I mentioned there is graded coloring. So it's going to make it easy to tell what are the areas on the chart that have high control or a lot of volume or low control. You know, they're not very important. They have low trading volume. And we can see here just that coloring difference on the volume profile immediately makes a huge difference and draws our eyes to what is actually important on the chart. Now, if you remember in our example we did manually, I drew those trend lines and we used those to say, hey, the bias of the chart is generally bullish. Well, what we have here in Volume IQ is what we call high-level, well, they're high-level bias indicators. We call them bias guidelines. And they border the top and bottom of the profile. And they'll be blue or green, like they are in this case, when the high-level directional bias is bullish, and red or purplish when it's bearish. And that depends on your color theme. And the idea with these is that these aren't simple guides. We spent a lot of time figuring out how to code these and get these running in TradingView. So they take into account not only the volume profile, so where is price in conjunction with the high volume nodes and low volume nodes, where is it in the entire range of the volume profile, what are the different biases of these blocks here, takes all this into account. And the good thing is that it's continuously optimizing. So it's testing out a bunch of different interpretations and then always picking the one that seems over time to be giving the best average performance in terms of price moving in the direction that the bias guidelines are telling you is the bias, right? Here it's saying it's bullish. We have a good reading that over time, this is probably going to be going up more than it's going to be going down. And finally, the big kicker, right? The brains of the operation that we spoke about. These are kind of like the cherry on top and the big important thing. These are the trading action zones that are displayed on the chart. And you can see some right here. And right now we can see, hey, down here, there's what we have called a tier 2 buy. Right here, there's a tier 1 sell, tier 1 sell, tier 1 buy. And just looking at this chart, I immediately have a takeaway. And what is that? Well, the most important trading action zone is down here. Look, right at this big block here, that's the only tier 2 trading action zone on the chart. It's got these 2 blocks. It's telling me that's the big spot to buy. And it's also telling me we're bullish, right? These guidelines. So I know just looking at this chart at a glance, hey, that's a good place to buy. That's probably the best trade setup for me to take. So in comparison now, I want to look at what does Volume IQ look like side by side with what we did manually. So what we did manually, if you remember, we spent all this time trying to see, hey, is there more selling here, more selling here? And are they grouped together? Are they all selling there? Okay, that's probably a sell area. This is probably a sell area. And we found out that the most important area was down here, and it's probably support because there's more buying volume. Well, all of this is done just way more precisely and immediately with volume IQ. Right away, when this indicator is applied to the chart we were looking at, I know here's price. Where is it? Price is inside of a neutral block. It's gray. There's no buy or sell bias right here. But above us and below us, well, we're jam stuck between two areas that have consistent selling pressure. So that's kind of what we work to figure out over here. This indicator is telling us, look, you're in between two areas that sell, and right below price, there's a sell action zone and a sell action zone. So we would have been thinking to buy back then, right? Based on that trend line right here. But Volume IQ is telling me the real story of the chart, which is no, no, no. Above us and below us, people like to sell, and right below us, people really like to sell. And the only place on this chart where you should be buying, which makes sense, where there's like everything lining up, is down here. There's a tier 2 buy because there's confluence with the fact that there is consecutive levels of buying down here. This is where traders are stepping in. And you know, that makes sense. It's the $20,800 mark. It's acting as support. And that's why the indicator is taking all this into account. It's taking into account overall we're bullish. There's a ton of volume down here. This is the focal point of the chart, the zone of control. People like to buy there. And below price right here, there's more bias, right? So this tier 2 buy is the conclusion we kind of strenuously came to, right? We had to do all that arduous work of plotting everything and then thinking. This one's telling us right away the best place to buy is down here. And the other thing it does is gives us spots to find our targets and stops, right? So not only do I see I'm going to be buying down here, I'd like to, but where would I like to place a target? Well, maybe up here, right? Because that's where people like to sell. So I can use the next action zone as my guide for an exit. Where am I going to place my stop? Well, right below price, if we buy in here, there's still some buying pressure, right? That's what this blue square is for. That's where buyers are. But then beneath that, we start to get into bear bias. So I would probably place my stop right when the box here, the bias block, shifts from blue to red, because I know the buying's over, right? Party's over. If I buy here at this signal, if it goes down here, I'm going to place my stop right there. And okay, not only all the things that I just show, those main features, of course, like with all of our indicators, it has a bunch of other options that we're going to be seeing some of coming up soon. It has way more features and it's totally customizable to whatever you'd like it to be. So, Daniel, actually, I think I'm going to hand it over to you now before we go ahead.
Yeah, well, thanks, Nicholas. This was awesome. Actually, Nicholas, before you hand it over to me, let's just go through, guys, what we've done. Of course, in the last 12 months, we not only implemented this volume profile indicators based on what we thought it would be a good idea. That would be, of course, it's always a nice thing to put our own input into it. But what we also did, and we spent a lot of time with it, we actually live traded, and of course we should, we live trade this account, this indicator with our own live money account. And Nicholas, in fact, he's trading this all the time. He's taken 3 trades in the last 2 days or so, I believe, Nicholas. And one trade we'd like to show you guys right now, and it's actually a live trade we took on the 5-minute NASDAQ futures chart. NQ is the symbol. And here's the thinking that Nicholas went through when planning out this trade and when taking this trade using this volume IQ indicator. So Nicholas, can you walk us through this trade that you took? When was it? Like a day ago?
Yeah, and actually we're going to see even afterwards more examples, and we're going to see it live on TradingView there, one of the trades I took today. But this one was a couple days ago, and I was up really late. I was up around 1 or 2 a.m. and I took a trade. Might have been even later than that. Yeah, you can see it's around going on 3 here. But here, what I did here on TradingView is I went back in replay mode to show, well, what was my thinking and how did I come to the conclusion to take this trade? Because the idea with the indicator is at a glance, gives you actionable entry and exit points, and it just makes trade setups very common and also very obvious. So this was, when was this? This was on the 3rd. Yeah, the 3rd of December. So yeah, just yesterday in the early hours of the morning. So what I saw on this chart was, this is the volume profile. I'm going to zoom in now. I saw 3 things immediately. Number 1 was the trend is bullish, right? We can see this blue guideline. And if you were watching NQ at that time, price blasted up over through 21,000. Then it started flagging here in the 21,200s. You can see here the guidelines are blue. So even though the bias is bullish, this probably isn't a really smart spot to be buying, because the nearest zone at 0.2 over here with significant consecutive buying interest is all the way down around 21,150. So even though I knew the chart was bullish, I wasn't about to go long because I was thinking, yeah, well, this isn't really, it's not very clear right here that this is a good spot to buy. It'd be smart to buy here, but we're not there right now. And the third thing I realized, the biggest thing, was I am smack right in a trading zone, an action zone. And this is a tier 2 sell, which is telling me everything's lining up, absolutely everything, that this is a high probability short and you should probably consider it, or maybe consider selling there if you hold along. And one of the reasons why is price right now is at the highest volume node. You can see this histogram really juts out here on the chart. It's very high volume. It's having trouble breaking through there. And then the only spot where traders really seem to be stepping in with significant buying volume is far below us. And right here, right beneath that signal, I also saw, we had a tier 2 sell, which is why I shorted right now, but we also have a tier 1 sell zone right beneath it. So if I short here, well, there's not really any support here, is there? So if I short, this is going to act like an accelerator, most likely. That's what seems to happen historically, not a lot of volume there. And we're probably going to drop down to where buyers are finding volume, and then maybe I'll take my profits down there. So that was the thinking. This was on the macro contract. So here's the trade I took, and we'll see in a sec, I think an actual chart picture. So I went short in the 220s because that's the action zone. That's where it said the indicator was telling me this is a smart spot to buy, or sorry, to sell. Everything lines up. I then set my stop loss up here because that would have been a breakout, and also there was a tier 1 buy zone, that's telling you basically that, hey, if price goes up to here, you should probably buy, go long or exit your short because we have a bullish bias and it's blue skies ahead. And finally, I said, hey, I'm going to set my target down here. So once we get to where the traders start to buy, I'm going to cover my short, right? Because I'm not going to be greedy. It seems like whenever it comes down here, people buy. It doesn't keep going down. So this was over 2.0 risk reward. And you'll see when we look at these other setups that this is why I love these action zones, because you can see a bunch of them on the chart. It makes it obvious what a potential setup right now is, how are things lining up for an entry or exit, and you can use them as targets and stops. So here I would go short right at the tier 2 sell. If we come down into this tier 1 sell, well, there's no support there. Look, it's neutral. There's not a lot of volume, and people aren't buying till down here. So we usually call tier 2s our entries and tier 1s our adds. So if I short it here, well, if it comes up here, I'm not going to short more because it's going against me. But if it does come down to this zone, maybe I'll add a bit more to my short because now I'm confident, right? Now it's playing out as I wanted it to, and I want to short before it drops even faster. So here's how that played out. So I took that short. I didn't end up adding. I just let it run. This on a macro contract. I didn't want to risk too much overnight. I entered right here, sold one at 21,229, which was right here in that action zone. I set my target down here, and guess what happened? Right before the open, price plummeted out of nowhere. I don't even know why this happened. It happened at like 8:45 or something. Maybe there was news, but price dropped, and look where it dropped to. You can see I exited at a market order, so I didn't get my fill, but I exited right here. Where did price stop dropping? Look on the volume profile. It stopped dropping once we entered into the area that the indicator was telling us is buying pressure. And we knew that. That's why like I said, I wasn't going to be greedy on this short. I'd take my profits if we came down there, because historically the story is that's where people buy, not where you short. And what happened after that? Price found support there like it had been doing historically. We already knew that. And then it bounced up. And where did it stop bouncing up, or where did it find resistance? Right back where we shorted at that tier 2 sell, which was still a tier 2 sell signal. So I could have covered here, sold again when we came in there, and then covered again. And by this time, like Daniel said, volume profiles are always changing, right? As volume comes in, of course, the histogram changes. This area right here, by this time, maybe a couple hours later, had now been identified as a new place where there was support. And if you knew what happened over the past day or so of NQ, this ended up actually being a great long right here. And if you had re-shorted right here, that definitely would have been a smart spot to start covering. You don't want to be shorting when there's buying pressure. And I have some other examples I'm going to get to later. Daniel, maybe you want to take it away till then?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Nicholas. And before we go to the other examples, there's just one comment that Mark did. I think you misspoke at some point where you mentioned your short price would be, I think maybe I didn't even catch it, would be at 20,200, but it probably should have been
Oh, my
21,200.
mistake. Yeah, 21,229, not
So
20,000.
Mark, that was just
Thank
a
you.
typo in speaking, so to say. Yeah, but it's 21,200, of course. All right, so I'm gonna grab back my screen, and I'd like to show you now, guys, before we get to all your questions, and thank you so much for putting all your questions into the Q&A box. It's been really great, very interactive. It shows there's some interest there. But let me explain to you guys how you can get your hands on our indicator, because it is our brand new product. We are releasing it officially today. And because of this, we do have a special offer prepared for everyone. All right, so if you want to check out the offer, I'm just going to put the link, mention the link right now. It's tradingindicators.com/volume. And Niklas, please put this link into the chat box for everyone. I think before we even get to the price of the whole thing, I like to say one thing right off the bat. As you can see, even with this indicator, I think things become clearer and patterns emerge and setups emerge easier. But there is also training required to make full sense of it. So keep this in mind, because this offer will come with a comprehensive masterclass on trading with volume profiles and with volume IQ specifically. So this is included to ensure that everybody who comes on board today will get all the education, all the training needed to get the most value out of this indicator. So I'd like to preface this right off the bat. Now, if you want to take advantage of it, here's the special offer that we put together. And as mentioned, this comes with some bonuses as well. So normally, the price of this indicator will be $1,997. That's the target price, what the price, what we're going to offer this indicator for. But for a limited time, we will offer the indicator for our early adopters for half this price, for $997 only. And this is for life. So you never have to pay a single penny again. You can get immediate access to the indicator for $997. And all you need to do for this is to go to tradingindicators.com/volume. And most importantly, enter the coupon code volume at checkout. It's displayed here. Niklas perhaps also put this code into the checkbox. Once you apply this coupon code, the price will drop from $1,997 to only $997. And once again, this is for life. Now, before I talk about the bonus offers that we're going to include with this purchase, I would like to mention that currently the indicator is available for TradingView. It works great on TradingView. It looks great on TradingView, and we've traded on TradingView and vetted it on TradingView. However, two other platforms at the minimum are in the works, and these platforms are NinjaTrader and Motivwave. So if you are on any of these platforms, if you're a NinjaTrader trader, for example, and you want to take advantage of this offer, of this deal, here's what you can do. You make the purchase today, you will get access to the TradingView version. And as soon as the NinjaTrader version is available, we will simply switch you over. That way, if you're on a different platform, Motivwave or NinjaTrader, you can still take advantage of this offer. So tradingindicators.com/volume, and make sure to enter the coupon code volume. Now let's talk about the bonus offers. So bonus offer number one is a live trading workshop. So we like to put our money where our mouth is. And we will have a live trading workshop next week on Thursday, on December 12th at 9:30 a.m., where we will live trade our own account, our real money account. It's not a demo account, using the Volume IQ indicator. And if you come on board, you will be invited to attend this live trading workshop. You can follow along. And to me, oftentimes, learning by doing, oftentimes, to me at least, it works the best. By observing of how we use the indicator, how we configure our chart, what are we looking for when it comes to buy signals on buy setups and sell setups. So this is bonus number one. You will be invited to this workshop. And of course, if you cannot make it at this time, no problem. It will be recorded, and the recording will be sent to you afterwards. Now, bonus number 2, and I mentioned this before, is exhaustive training, comprehensive training, and we call this the Volume Profile Masterclass. It will consist of multiple sessions. We don't know yet how many. We're going to have as many as needed to cover every single aspect of trading with volume profiles in general, and specifically with our Volume IQ indicator. So this is bonus number 2, and the first training session is scheduled for Friday the 13th, a lucky day, at 12 p.m. Eastern. Once again, it's recorded. You will get the recording afterwards. So if you can't make that day, you can always watch the recording. And then, of course, there will be additional sessions afterwards. So if you use Volume IQ or not, at least this masterclass will get you all the insights that we have gathered throughout the months and years that we now attempted to trade with volume profiles in a distilled form. So we're going to share with you what we consider important, which setups do we identify when it comes to volume profile trading, and of course, how can we leverage Volume IQ or indicator to identify these setups. That's bonus number 2. And bonus number 3, you will be invited to our weekly trading sessions. So these are live market sessions. They are scheduled for on every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. The next one taking place December 10th, next week, Tuesday. And in those sessions, we discuss some new developments. We look at their charts. We look at some questions. It's a great place for you to ask questions. There will be lots of Q&A. You will learn tips and tricks. So you will be invited to these weekly trading sessions as well. And this also includes access to our Discord channel. So we're going to throw in all these 3 bonuses to make sure that you get everything you need and all the support you need to get started with this indicator. Because we believe that once you master it, it can be an invaluable tool in your trading arsenal. So it's so important for us that you not only get this indicator, but you will also get all the training and all the suggestions and all the input needed to make the most out of it. All right. Now, before we get to some questions, let me see if there are any questions regarding this offer.
We have a couple, Daniel, if you want me to cover them.
Go
So
for it.
Klaus wanted to know, I think you already answered this. You wanted to know, is it only for TradingView? And you mentioned, we're going to be developing for other platforms. And then we had 2 questions. What is the estimated release date for NinjaTrader and MotiveWhip?
Yeah, I'm looking at Nicholas there because he will be, rolling up his sleeves for that one. Conservatively, it might be fast, but conservatively, I would think perhaps in February next year. So as you can imagine, this is our most complex indicator. It took us a long time to get it right on TradingView. And actually, one thing before I even talk about release dates for other platforms, one thing that you can be assured of is that we will be posting updates to this indicator. We're going to look for your input that you gathered while using the indicator to further improve it. And should we release updates, these updates will also be yours. So any update will be included in this purchase. So whenever we make an improvement, you can rest assured that you will get this update as well. So in terms of release date, I mean, conservatively, I'd say maybe end of February next year for NinjaTrader and perhaps 1 month later for MotiveWave. We'll see. I mean, it might be faster than this, but conservatively, these are our target release dates for these 2 platforms. Any other questions, Nicholas?
We had a question, Daniel, which platform would we recommend if they didn't already have one? I said, personally, I'd recommend TradingView just because of the low barrier to entry. So yeah, if you don't already have a platform. And Mark says, when I buy Volume IQ for TradingView, and I like to use it in NT8, do I have to exchange my license from TV to NT8?
That would be one way to do it. So we do the switches free of charge. If let's say you're on TradingView and later on we have NinjaTrader available, yes, you can be switched. That's no problem. You will also have the option to get a second license at a very discounted price. But for this, just reach out to me to see what the options for that one is.
Perfect. And we also have another question here. I think that was already answered. We have a question from Zerman. He says he's going to be interested when it's ready for NT8. And this is actually, wow, what a good question, because I didn't think of this. He says, is the profile starting point fixed, or can the starting point be manually anchored Well, on something like NT8 or Motive Wave, I'm going to assume it's going to be able to be anchored. On TradingView, you have a max look back, right? You cannot look back too far, and there's a calculation limit. Like if a script takes more than a couple milliseconds to calculate, or sorry, 180 milliseconds, I think, then it times out. You can't use it. Also, an indicator cannot look back more than, I think it's 1,000 bars for something like a profile. But on NinjaTrader, yeah, I think it will be anchorable. That's smart. There's no reason why it wouldn't be. And is it vertical or volume at price evaluated for defining the tier? We had a couple questions about how the tiers are done. It's extremely complicated, so I think we're going to leave that to the workshop to explain how the different action zones are defined and plotted.
Yeah, so it's complicated in the background of what we had to do to calculate them, but the idea, of course, is to use them to simplify your trading. And once you get the hang of it, and we try to keep it as straightforward as it was possible, and many iterations actually went through that, is to simplify trading for you and to distill the important parts for you and what you should be focusing on. All right. Now, thanks for your questions. We do have some other stuff prepared for today because, in fact, so we like this indicator so much that we've been trading it so much. And actually, in fact, we took 2 more trades today, Nicholas, didn't we? Or was it 1 trade? I forgot.
One yesterday afternoon. We actually had a question after I showed the example. Did we take another trade that day? And the answer is yeah. We took a really nice one in the afternoon. It was the biggest winner.
And Nicholas, let's check out this trade. Let's see what you were thinking at that point, because again, learning by example typically is the best learning you can do. So Nicholas, take it away one more time, please.
Cool. Okay, I'll share my screen. And thanks for all the questions. A lot of the great ideas there as well. So here is the next trade. So if you remember, the last trade we took was right over here. We shorted early hours of the morning and then covered right before the open. So that's here around 9 a.m. I covered. Now here is fast forwarding to the afternoon. So here's our spot where we covered right around 9 a.m. Now the volume profile changed throughout the day. That area that was a tier 2 sell ended up becoming a tier 2 buy later as more volume rolled in, and the bias of the chart started to shift here to blue, right? So we have a bullish bias right here, and we'll see all the different points I looked at in the chart to make this trade, and it turned out really, really nice. So point number 1 I found was, or the indicator told me, I didn't find it, is the bias is now bullish, right? I see it on these guidelines. Number 2 is we are coming up to a tier 2 buy zone. So when I looked at this, when I was taking this chart, price was coming right up to this tier 2 buy zone. If we get through that volume, now this is what I noticed. Now the indicator told me the big thing, right? Tier 2 buy right here is this an awesome spot to buy it around 21,200. What I noticed then, I mean, the indicator told me this too, that there's also another buy area up here. So that's bullish. But I noticed, hey, look, if I buy here in this tier 2 buy zone, if we make it above, if that works out, we're walking right into an area that has a bias to the bullish side. It's bullish. So if we get a nice entry here, there's going to be a bunch of buyers probably coming in, driving price even higher. And that's why the indicator is one of the factors why it told us that that's a tier 2 buy. So I noticed it myself, but the indicator took care of it for me, just giving me that tier 2 signal. And finally, number 3, this is what I noticed was, hey, there's a tier 1 sell zone right below price. Now, that might sound not very bullish to you, but to me, it's great for my trade because I know, well, that's where I could place my stop loss. Because otherwise, where would I place my stop loss on this chart? Maybe this pivot, this pivot. I mean, those are kind of arbitrary. It's okay to use them. But I knew right here, the indicator is telling me, hey, this is a tier 1 sell area because there doesn't seem to be a lot of volume. And the volume that does come in is either neutral or bearish. That's why it's tier 1. So on this trade, I took an entry right here, placed my stop right down around here at the bottom of this area, which I think was like 21,170 or something like that. And I didn't have a target because I figured, hey, if we come up to here, I'll see what happens. I'll see where it goes. And then I'll make up my mind of where to exit at market later on. So this was on the micro NASDAQ, not the regular NASDAQ this time. So that was around, I don't know, around noon or something. I took that entry. So I started buying in, and you could see this right here. This zone, that tier 2 buy, that's the tier 2 buy back here. So now we've fast forwarded like 5 or 6 hours, okay? So I was buying in here, and you can see here were my entries. I was buying in 21,206, 21,216. That was right when I took Look at this, 21,216.25, my buy, 21,216.25. And I was actually buying in a little bit earlier too when I saw this tier two. It actually came a little bit earlier. But I scaled in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 micro contracts with an average around here. And I knew that above price, there was that buy bias. And what ended up happening? Well, it ended up holding price. And then we ended up zooming up. And we zoomed up to here. This would have been a great spot to add 21,250. The indicator put a tier one buy there. I didn't do it because I was like, I don't want to get in for more than 5 contracts right now. This contract's already up like 400 points in 24 hours. Once we came up to 21,250, that would have been a good spot to add because then price ended up going way higher. And you can see here, this is where I started exiting. I sold 3 here, I sold 1, then I held 1 for a couple more hours. And this is a screenshot I sent to Daniel at the time. And you can see as time has gone on, the volume profile's changed, right? Because now we have new levels being like grandfathered into the histogram, added into the histogram. And we can see it's telling us different stuff right now. So we've got tier one sell zones all beneath us. And that's actually, as we were coming up here, once I saw those forming, that's why I was taking my profits. Because what it's telling us basically here is, look, you're way away from this tier two buy down here. And there's not even that much volume, even though it is bullish. There's not that much volume. And if it does start to drop, well, there's not really any support nearby necessarily. So I took the profits once I saw those sell areas forming. And another trade, the last one I'm going to show here just with these slides, and then we'll get to charts, is one I took today. And this one wasn't as big of a winner, but I just want to show you how the logic works. So this is now on micro NASDAQ again, and this is today. So imagine if I held this trade from yesterday. We were in the 21,200s, and then today, we're already at 21,500. What I saw, and when was this? This was not long ago. Yeah, this was in the afternoon, around 2:30. So I looked at the chart and I saw 3 things. And number one, if you're looking at this, what is the story that's being told to you by Volume IQ here? Well, these boxes, right? Those are bias boxes. Those are drawn by the indicator. To me, it's telling us, like, look, this is like a ladder of just pure buying pressure. So I knew things are very bullish. So the first thing I saw is we are inside one of these blocks. We're in a heavily supported block. There's all buying volume. Look at how much buying volume is on these bars. And the indicator is telling us that. So I knew I knew I wanted to go long because 0.3 down here, or did I even put a point for it? No, but we do have a bullish bias right here with these guidelines. So I kind of knew I want to go long. Everything's lining up to go long. It's all buy areas. There isn't a single sell area. There are tier one sell signals, but these are more for stop losses if you're already long. We'll explain that in the workshops. But I knew I want to buy. And I also had confidence that we're in an area where people are buying. So I'm not afraid if I buy one micro contract or one contract, it was on NQ. I think it was MNQ, that might be a typo. I'm not afraid if I buy that we drop down a bit because we're still being supported. And in fact, if we pull back a bit, I might just add. And I also knew I have an easy place to put a stop loss right here. Number 0.2, there's a tier one sell. So if I go long right here, I can just put my stop right here and figure out my reward to risk because the indicator is telling me, hey, volume starts to peter out around there. So it might drop further. And finally, yeah, 0.3, it's a bullish bias. And right above price, there is a tier one buy. So my logic here was we're in a supported area. And if we go just a bit higher, the indicator is telling me it's probably a good spot to buy. So I wanted to get in early on the train, basically, because I knew I had a place to put a stop loss. This was when price was about to test 21,500. And of course, what happened if you're looking at the contract? And what did I take here? 20, like barely 30, 35 or 40 points or something like this. It wasn't a big trade, but you can see this is when I bought in down here in this area. I put my stop right there. So I got in here, average around 484.5 or something. And I put my stop right at the top of this, which I think at the time was like 21,448. And then I just wanted to see where it was going to go. And then I didn't have a target because, of course, there's no level above here that I really wanted to base my logic on. And yeah, price drove up. It got into that tier one buy, and then it went higher, broke through 21,500. And I wanted to make sure I'm all set up for the webinar today. So I didn't want to watch this trade anymore. I closed it out over here, probably a little bit prematurely, but now we're back to around here in after hours. So I hope that is a good example of just the story you can get right away. Like you look at this charts, what's the story? We're in an area where people are putting heavy support. If it goes to here, that's not good. So you might want to put a stop loss there. But if we go here, that's very bullish. So you might want to buy, put a stop here, and the bias overall is bullish, everything's lining up for a long, and you've got your reward to risk zones, those trading action zones where we suggest you might want to take an action, which might be an entry or an exit, are everywhere on the chart, telling us important information.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicholas. We do have quite a few questions coming in. Before we look at the live charts, let's get some of these questions out of the way. So one more time, there was a question regarding the offer. So what can you expect when you take advantage of it? So thanks for that question. It's very valid. So you will get a confirmation email immediately after your purchase, asking you for your TradingView username. You will send it to us. Just reply to this email, put the username in there. We will enable your access, and from that point on, you have access in your TradingView account to this indicator, and you're ready to use it. As easy as this. In this email, you will also get a couple of links. One link to register for our live trading workshop next Thursday. Next Thursday at 9:30 a.m. It's going to be a 2-hour workshop where we're going to live trade the markets using this indicator, and another link to register for the master class on volume profile trading, which where the first session starts on Friday, December 13th. So you're going to get these 2 links, and more links will come later for you how to take advantage, for example, of our weekly member sessions. That's also going to be sent out to you shortly after. All right. So there was a question regarding this offer. And once again, it's tradingindicators.com/volume. But make sure to also enter the coupon code volume at checkout, because that's the only way which drives down the price from 1,997 to only 997. All right, so now let's look at some questions. Oh boy, so I tried to keep track of as many as possible, but let me start from the top. Okay, so Robert had a bunch of questions as to what should be a good look back period for creating the volume profile. Now in TradingView, you are somewhat limited to it. We didn't find this to be a limitation at all when it comes to the outcome of how to trade with it, but you cannot go arbitrarily far back. And Nicholas, do you remember off the top of your head, how far can you go back on TradingView in terms of analyzing historical bars?
It's a maximum of 1,000 bars. And I think maybe that could be a suggestion that we might put in an option for a custom amount of bars or something like this. But by default, we found it worked really well looking back 500 bars. And on TradingView especially, and oh, I forgot to mention the indicator, to best estimate buy and sell volume, it uses intrabar data, and you can also switch it to bar data. It's an option technically, but this increases the complexity to calculation, because if you're on a 5-minute, it's going to be looking at 1-minute bars. So on TradingView, if you're looking back 1,000 bars and it's doing that, that's now 5,000 1-minute bars. Your calculation might time out. The indicator might take too long to calculate. And you'll see that, with basically any volume profile on TradingView. We found it, like I just showed there, trading 500 bars. And we call that, I think, long-term in the settings. And then short-term, it looks at 250 bars. 500 bars is good. And if you want more information, I just hop over to a higher time frame.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Nicholas. Another question, and was it Brian? Thanks so much for asking this, because I forgot to actually explain that. He was wondering, how does this indicator fit in with what we already have out there in terms of indicators, in terms of liquidity IQ or MA rush? Great question. And Nicholas, first of all, it fills a very important gap. That's certain. This was our missing puzzle piece when it comes to trading. So it complements your trading arsenal. But Nicholas, I keep forgetting the analogy that you had when it comes to liquidity IQ and volume IQ. How would you contrast the two?
Yeah, so what I found, I think the best way to look at it is liquidity IQ is like the telescope, right? So you're looking big picture when you're using liquidity IQ. That's why it looks at higher time frames, right? So liquidity IQ kind of sets the borders of the chart by finding those important levels, those resistances and supports. And then it's the telescope. Volume IQ is now like the microscope. So volume IQ helps you predict how price is going to move between those high level supports and resistances. Because if you use liquidity IQ, I'm sure you can realize that if you go on the 1-minute chart and you're trying to trade the 1-minute chart, and then you put the reference time frame to the 30-minute or the 15-minute, it might take 5,000 bars for price to finally reach that support that's way below where price currently is. So if you're trying to trade a setup based on those levels, those higher time frame levels, they might not always be present, right? It might take a week until it finally hits support, whereas volume IQ is on the chart time frame. So it's helping you predict while you're seeing price move between those higher time frame levels. It helps you predict how is it going to act now? How is it going to kind of zig and zag between the different action zones where there is or isn't a lot of trading activity, kind of as it weaves its way between the higher time frame levels. So they do work together very well, and they look very good together as well. And yeah, I've always got both on the chart when I'm trading.
Yeah, exactly. Great question. And Zerman wants to know, and lots of nice, interesting technical questions today that shows you guys are very engaged. He wants to know, so volume profile analysis looks at volume over time. So what was the volume over the last, let's say, 500 bars? That's what a volume profile does. But of course, there's also merit in looking at volume at the current time. How much trading volume was there at the current bar? And is this taken into account? Zerman, yes, it is. And in fact, our sentiment analysis, our AI-driven analysis of what is the current market sentiment doing, is it bullish or bearish? This takes into account also current volume. So it's playing a part in that analysis. So it's kind of a mix, even though, of course, the focus is more on volume over time. It's a volume profile indicator after all. Also, volume at a time is considered to some extent as well.
And that plays in, Daniel, again, to Brian's question where he said, how does it line up with liquidity IQ? Well, liquidity IQ, if you know, it's based on, it basically takes pivot points from higher time frames, combines them, and then grades them by how much volume. So liquidity IQ is kind of covering the volume at a time, and then volume IQ is looking at volume over time. We have a question from Klaus. Does it support tick charts? That's a good question. On TradingView, it should support every single bar type available that you have access to, so long as they have some sort of measure of volume. So yes, yep.
Perfect, yeah. So that should be no problem, even though I guess one bar type, I'm just thinking out loud here, which might be a bit immune to this equal volume bars, because I guess then the volume is artificially enforced to be the same. But besides this, and maybe I'm even wrong of that, it should support every single bar type. So thanks for that question. All right, so let me see what else do we have. We're gonna get to some. What is our preferred time frame to trade MNQ? So Niklas, he's the master MNQ trader. That's his favorite instrument. That's a great question for you. Niklas, what time frame do you typically use for MNQ?
I really like the 5-minute and the 15-minute. Sometimes if it's a crazy day and things are going super fast, like price is moving massively, maybe I'll try to trade the 1 minute because it's enticing. But I find the 1 minute generally for trading, at least with the indicators I use, liquidity IQ and volume IQ a lot of the time. The 1 minute's too small, and I don't get a big enough picture. I like the 5-minute because it's in the I want to be into a trade. I don't want to hold a trade through the close at 5 p.m. From the start of day until the close, when I'm trading, 5-minute bars do offer enough action. And something like the 30-minute, it's not very good to predict if you're trying to get in and out in the same day. 30 minutes too high, 5 minutes good, and I'll often look at the 15-minute for guidance or to see what's happening on that higher time frame. So I really prefer the 5-minute.
Yeah. A question came in from David. He wants to know, does it or will this indicator at some point be available for Thinkorswim? I mean, we always try to support as many platforms as possible, but for this one, I mean, at least at first glance, due to platform limitations of Thinkorswim, it's a really old platform by now, and how old it is, this may not be possible because the analysis required to do these calculations, they will time out Thinkorswim, at least as far as we can tell right now. All right, Niklas, I think it's time to look at some more charts. Can we look at some live charts, seeing what's going on the market right now?
Yeah, sure. So maybe if anybody has a symbol request as well, but I'm just going to start sharing my TradingView right now to get us started. So let me share.
I'm going to stop sharing my.
So what screen do you see? You see my slide probably?
Yes.
Okay, so let me drag over TradingView. Okay, and I'm going to start here. Here's that trade I was just showing on the slide there that we took. And that was on the 5-minute on MNQ. And let me close this out. And you can see really when you put the indicator on right away, as I've been saying, it tells a story of the chart. So up here right now, there's really no good spot. According to the indicator, of course, there could be many good spots, but the only action zones, that's what I always look at first, is the one right up here. So if I'm looking to go long, I wouldn't be looking to go short just yet, right? Because we're so bullish. The only place that I would be looking to buy is probably once we get to this little tier 1 action zone. And when I see a tier 1 action zone, it kind of tells me, hey, that's kind of what the story's saying will happen, but don't bet your life on it, right? Don't bet everything on it. It's only tier 1. Tier 2 is where I like to take entries. And on this chart, the only tier 2 is all the way down here. It's actually the same tier 2 that we saw me enter long in the slides, if you remember that, when we went long at around 226 or something like this, 21, 226. That's that same tier 2 all the way down there. It's still the best place to be buying on this chart. So here, if I was looking to go long, there's no real action zone nearby for me to go long unless we get this breakout one up here. But I could use other stuff from the indicator as well to help me plot out my trade. So maybe the only action zone is up here, but look what we have down here. We've got what we call a bias block, and it's bullish bias. I know that when price comes into this region, historically for the day, people buy here. There's way more buying volume than there is selling volume, of course, because we were in an uptrend. So if I'm looking to go long, I might want to wait until we drop down into here, and then I go long at a point where I have good reward to risk, because I could use this as my stop loss. And the reason why, and this is a tier 1 sell, so maybe if we drop down into here, I know we're getting into the area where people start to prop it up. People start buying, and buying pressure comes in. So I might buy as we drop down into here, place my stop right here. And this is a tier 1 sell. It's a bearish sign. And the logic of the indicator at this point in time is thinking, yes, we are inside of a biased block here. There's more buying volume. However, this point right here is basically the least popular area, right? There's a little a cutout here in the volume profile. There's not that many people buying at this level. So it's kind of telling us, hey, yes, you can buy here, but then once you start to come down to here, maybe you want to consider not buying anymore or exit, because now look what happens. Once you come down here, all the traders have been buying up here. What are they going to be doing once price is all the way down here? They're probably going to start selling, right? Because they're scared, and it might drive movement downwards, which is why that's there. And we can see similar tier 1 sells on this chart within this trend. So this is on MNQ. And before I hop over to another chart, maybe I'll just hop over to one anyways, and then we will look at the indicator settings. And
Great
look at some other charts.
segue. Gold was just requested by Dilip.
Oh, great. Okay, so
Awesome.
I thought this was a cool one. So I wanted to say, well, how would I read this, right? So to me right now, on this chart, this is the gold 15-minute chart. This profile right now, and I think I have it set on the 15-minute, I should have it to intrabar data. I do. What is the story being told to me right now? Well, first of all, I'm going to change one of these settings just so it looks like the way we are used to seeing it in the slides. I'm going to move these action zones to the left. We have a feature called time staggering, we call it, which kind of the closer zones are to price, the nearer they're going to be to the left, just to give you kind of an intuitive sense of how long it might take for that action zone to be reached. So right here, what do I see? Well, the overall bias on this symbol, on this time frame, is bullish. We got these bullish guidelines here, these blue ones. And I bet if I scroll out, there might be some justification for that. Okay, so at this point in time, it is still bullish, the bias. So I'm going to keep that in mind. However, the best place to buy is all the way down here, right? On this chart, at least. This is where the tier 2 buy is. All the way down here at 2665. And even though it's inside of this bear, and we're going to get into this in the workshop as well, I keep saying, but even though this is a sell pressure block, a bias block down here, it's still telling us this is a tier 2 buy. And the reason, some of the logic for that is, yeah, there is more selling than buying here, but we're above it. And the overall bias is bullish. And this is the zone of focus on the chart. So right now it's actually acting as a form of support, which is why it's saying this is the best spot to buy. You want to buy at support, right? For a bounce. So, and we just see this tier just shifted, right? It just changed as we came down through it. Now, if we are above this tier 1 buy block right now, it's going to shift to a sell. And this right now is telling me I want a short. Okay, it's not a high probability short. Instead, this should be a spot you're selling if you're long. But right now it's telling you, hey, it's not a terrible idea to try a trade right here. And maybe you would want a short and cover down here. But you have to take everything into context. So on this chart, basically what I'm trying to say is I'm not doing anything unless we come down to this area, and I'm going to go long. There's not much reason to go short here. This tier 1 sell is basically a spot we would have or can in the future take profits at if we buy down here, but it's not a very strong short signal. So what are some other factors here?
Yeah, and Nicholas, real quick before you do the other factors, Mark was wondering, can this indicator be customized? And can you quickly show the parameters that we have? And it's not important to understand them all. This is part of the training, how this indicator can be customized. Because it can basically do anything with it. So
okay, yes. So maybe let's go to a different, this is a fine chart to do it on. So there's a good amount of settings and you can really customize it so it looks however you want. So number one, like all of our indicators, we have the option to select different pre-made color themes, right? Which are going to set a buy color, a sell color, and a neutral color. You can see here the neutral color is like this gray, but in this case, the sell is purple and the buy is green. And you can select all of these different themes that we have. The next thing you can do is you can actually just turn that off entirely so that you can define your own theme. So if I turn off use a color theme, you're going to be able to define your own colors. Here they're green, red, and gray by default. You can also turn off the gradient coloring. So the feature here, which puts focused on where there's the most volume, that's like the brightest, then it gets dimmer where there's less volume. You can turn that off if it's something you would like to do, or if it's easier for you visually. You can also turn off or turn on the action zones, these boxes here. So I can turn those off, or I can turn on time staggering, which is not, it sounds complicated, super simple, basic idea. It's just meant to be intuitive. So see what happened here is all of the action zones used to be lined up together. Now they are spread out from left to right. And time staggering, the idea, it just staggers them rightwards the further they are from price. And the idea is just to give you an idea of the time that might be required for us to actually get there, right? So we're not getting to this box at the same time that we're going to maybe get to this box. So it's putting it further away. So that's just for intuitive usage. Tier labels, you can also turn off these blocks if they're getting in your way, the tier 1 and tier 2 blocks, or if you don't like the tier readings, you just want to know where the zones are, you can turn those on and off. And just think with Liquidity IQ, the range of these zones, you can see they're very tight here. On another chart, they might be a little less tight. Well, on this time frame, they tend to be pretty small, but these vary with current volatility. So if we're more volatile, they're going to get larger, indicating that you can expect some flubbing around the level instead of price just touching it because we're really volatile. You can also turn on or off those bias blocks on the right. These are called bias blocks, which are the groupings of consecutive levels with the same bias. You can also change how they're displayed. So right now they're set to the right. You can click left. And when I click left, you see it's going to start at the end of the profile and just stretch leftward. So that's up to you how you want to change your visuals. And I really don't like these colors right now. I'm going to turn on my theme. You can set it right or left, or you can also click across. And when you click across, of course, that's what we were using in the slides. It's going to, bam, stretch across the entire thing and envelop the individual levels. Level bias labels. So that's for turning on or off these little rectangles here at each level, telling you what's the bias, buy, sell, or neutral. You can turn those on or off. You can also turn on or off the guidelines, these things. Those are getting in your way. And you can turn off, I think we might have them just, no, I think we have them on by default, but you can turn on or off these counts. And these counts on the right are just telling you how much volume is actually traded at that level. You can also turn on split, buy, or sell. And like Daniel said, we're always developing this indicator. So one of the first things I'm going to be trying to put out actually and see if TradingView can handle this many labels is I want to make it so it's a little bit clearer. So when I click split, buy, sell, what this is telling us is, hey, and this might be hard to read on your screen, which is why we have the option to increase the font size. It says here 14,500 contracts bought, 16,900 sold. So what it's telling us here is there's more sell volume than buy volume, right? 17,500, 15,300. There's more sell volume. So if you want to see that, or you want to see how the tide's turning, these will update in real time. And maybe in the future, we're going to put them so they're differently colored. So it's a little clearer that the first one's buy, the second one is sell. So that's the volume counts. You can turn those on. You can turn them entirely off. And finally, you can also even As you can see, we really went all out with the things you can and can't do, or can and do and change. You can also turn off the actual histogram. So maybe you don't like these, they're taking up your space. You can click histogram display none. And once this loads, hey, look, now I just got my zones and my action zones. And you can see they're all individual, right? So I still got, looks a little strange. I still got my bias labels here. You can have it so just these bias blocks are showing. You can have it so just the guidelines are showing. You can have it for so just one of any of the features is showing. And finally, down here by default, the detail is going to be set to bar data. This is because you don't want to cap out, depending on the time frame you're on, the calculation time. And having bar data, it means it's basically less granular because it's using the bars or the candles on the chart time frame to estimate buy and sell volume. It's a little less granular. And when you click intrabar data, now since I'm on the 15-minute chart, it's going to get a different reading because now it's actually going to be tabulating these buy and sell volumes based on a lower time frame, like the 1 or 2 minute or something like this. And the volume profiles, see, they don't shift that much. Like here, see these two zones? These end up combining into one when it's less granular. When I go to bar data, most of the time it's going to be fairly similar, but just take that into account. Usually the general reading is about the same in the action zones. And you can also change it from long-term to short-term. So long-term, I think it's probably going back somewhere like here. That's why our volume profile spans from this low all the way to this high. If I click short-term, it's going to look back less bars, and maybe we'll get a snapshot of the more recent action, like right here. And this just depends on, well, what do you care about? What are you trading on? Are you trading on the really short term? Is the market moving particularly fast right now? Maybe you wanted to zone in on how things have changed. So that's what these options are for, short and long term. And here on this chart, we're bullish. This might be a good spot to sell if you're already long, but the best spot to buy is going to be still down there in the low 260s, 2660s.
Cool.
So that's all the settings. And finally, Daniel, one last thing is you can change the number of levels. So if I want to see 50, that's what it is by default. I can also split it up to 100. So now I've got 100 different levels. And if you're using these levels for placing targets and stops or seeing expected ranges, changing this can also be helpful. Maybe you're a guy who maybe you like to hold micro contracts on the 5-minute for 4 days in a row. So maybe you want just less levels so you get more of a wide picture of where you might want to put your stops and targets instead of such a precise scalping type look as 100 rows.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Nicholas, for this rundown. So I hope this gives you an idea of how much you can customize. But one important thing to point out is that this indicator will work right out of the box. You can just apply it to the chart and it will work just fine. So these customizations, they're optional. If you want to do it and make it really your own, you can, but it is not needed. So it has good default settings that we use as defaults in our trading. So you should be all set with these. But of course, if you have a different color preference, if you want to go back a bit further in terms of data, want to have more levels, perhaps want to hide certain things, you can if you have the option if you want to. All right. So, and Jeffrey, no, it does not require level 2 data. This is not needed. So your regular data with TradingView will just be fine. All right. Dilip wants to know, does it work with higher time frames, such as daily?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Yeah, so I'll hop over to the daily chart. This is on MNQ still. And no way, it already calculated. Okay, so it already calculated. This is on the daily chart. If I want to go any time frame, it doesn't matter. It's using the chart data. And if you're, that's actually something to mention. If let's say you don't have the expert subscription on TradingView and you go to the 1-minute chart and you try to use intrabar data, well, the indicator is going to be looking for something smaller than the 1 minute, right? Like 5-second bars. If you don't have a subscription to 5-second bar data, just turn on the bar data option inside the indicator, turn off intrabar in that case. But it works on any time frame, any chart type. You're good to go.
All right, so let's do maybe 2 or 3 more symbols, and then we're gonna summarize a little bit. So real quick, we looked at gold already. What about what do we have? Some stocks. FCX, Freeport-McMoRan.
Sure, stocks. And this would be on a swing trading time frame,
I would guess so, yeah.
So let's take a look right here. Let's put on some intrabar data. 50 bars is enough. And let's see, let me make sure I didn't screw any settings up. All right, so put on this theme. So what do we see here on this chart? Well, number one, we're reading the first snapshot I see is we have got a bearish bias. The sentiment overall right now is not terribly bullish. And if you look at the chart, I mean, this might be a higher low, but we are making lower highs and we are currently not looking too good here if we don't bounce. So I would trust that. So the bias guideline is we're kind of bearish, and the nearest action zones, this is why I said my volume IQ, sorry, is like the microscope, because it's always going to have nearby action zones, which I really like. What this is telling me here is, hey, we are inside an area which is a bullish biased block, right? We can see here there is buying volume consecutively in this area between, what is this, 41.82 and 43.50. So we're in an area that has support. But if this support doesn't start to hold up, doesn't seem to be holding up, we're also inside of a tier one sell area. So this is kind of bearish, especially considering we are in a, well, we have a bearish sentiment on the high level. So this might be a decent place to take a short, take one short. It's a tier one short, right? I'm not going to be entering and betting the house, but maybe you want to go in here for a couple stocks, because if this support doesn't end up holding and this, this bearish sentiment persists, look what's right below us. A position, a place to add again to our short. So if we short here, it's also telling us, hey, you not only have a tier one sell right there, you got a tier one sell right below it. So these are two factors telling me, hey, nearby, there's quite a few reasons to be, quite a few opportunities that might accelerate this downwards. And where would I put my target? Well, I'm not going to put my target anywhere except right here. Once we're getting into this support zone down here, where people seem to be buying, right? It's a bullish block. And this is the zone of control on the chart. And not only that, it is a tier two buy. So it's telling you, I mean, and look historically, it's very smart like that. This has been a spot where the stock bounces. It bounced here, it bounced here, it bounced here, it bounced here and here. So it's telling me, hey, once we get down there, this is a tier two buy. So if you're short, get out of there. And if you have no position, maybe you want to go long there. The only thing on this chart, particularly, that I'd be thinking is, where would I put my stop if I go short here? Excuse me. Well, the nearest action zone is way too far away for me, because the nearest action zone is all the way here. Actually, maybe that's not that bad as per stop. Stop loss right at the bottom of it, that's around $46. You're going short at 43, and the target is, let's say, 38. So that's what? That's 4.5 over 3. So a 1, I don't know what that is, 4.5 over 3. 1 point, what would that be? 1.5.
Something like that. Yeah,
something like that. So it's not great, but a decent reward to risk ratio as a trade. But you can see here, you got to look at the story of it, and then the action zones are telling you what's probably going to happen based on historical data, based on what's happened previously with buyers and sellers. You take it into context, and then you can place your entries, your targets, your planned areas for maybe you place a stop short order here. So you place your ad before it even reaches there, in case one morning it wakes up and it's gapping down. And you can use these action zones to just plan your trade. That's why we call them action zones, because not technically, this isn't a, we're not telling you this is a buy signal, go in now. These are action zones. They're areas that we're suggesting you might want to think about taking action if you've got a trade open, or if you're looking to open a trade.
And Nicholas, real quick, one last symbol. Let's look at an FX chart, because we had a couple of requests. Does this one work on FX?
Sure, yeah, it does work on FX. And I'm not too familiar with FX, Daniel. Like, how does the volume work here? So I applied it here. This is USD CAD. And I just noticed, to me, it looked strange here how neutral everything is. Maybe that's just the way it is on FX trading. That there isn't, or on this chart, I mean, that's just the fact of the chart, right? Because it's based on up and down bars. So it does work on FX. It's going to work on any symbol type, so long as the symbol has a reading of volume on the chart. We can see here, yes, there is volume for USD CAD. If I hop over to the 15, maybe let's look at one more FX, Daniel. I'm kind of interested. Check out the Japanese yen.
Some live investigation.
Jim was talking about the Japanese stock market today, so maybe something interesting is happening. So here, bullish bias and tier two buy right down here. And where could we place? But it is within a sell block here, so we keep that in mind. That looks like a good opportunity. Is a buy right here, and then a stop loss if it sells down into this neutral zone. And it makes sense. I mean, look, that's right at the $150 mark, which I'm sure might have some sort of significance because it's such a big number for this chart.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks. We get so many symbol requests. I don't think we can do all of them. And Bill, we're gonna do your symbol because I know you're part of our membership already. Maybe in our training next week. Let's just do one last one for John SQ. So Bill, please
Square or
forgive
block.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Daniel. SQ? Yes.
SQ square.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And here, again, we cover this. We'll be covering this in the live trading and everything. But here, what would the plan be? The story: buy here in the tier 2. When it bounces up, add, sell maybe at the next one. So it helps us plan as well. Okay, SQ stock. And what time frame was that, Daniel? Was there any specific
Probably
time
a
frame?
swing trading time frame. Let's do
Oh, okay, the
maybe
4 hour.
yeah.
Okay,
For
let's
example.
hop over the 4 hour. Oh, whoa. Wow. So let me just make sure I'm on intrabar data. Yes, I am. So, okay, what do I see here? Well, this stock is on, it's super bullish. I mean, we don't need the guidelines to tell us that, but it's just ripping far away from any sort of reality, right? And let me just make these turn off these volume count labels just so it looks a little bit clearer. So what do I see here? Well, there's no action zone being labeled from the indicator anywhere near here. In fact, the only thing that the story it's telling us right here is you better hope that you're already long. And if you are long and we come down to here, maybe you want to sell. Okay, that's the only action zone that's nearby. Price is really tearing away. If I wanted to be planning a trade here, obviously I wouldn't be planning a short because I don't know when this thing will meet resistance. Maybe a liquidity IQ would give me a level or something. But what I do see is there is this bias block that we're in. So, and there hasn't been many bars here, right? There's only 2 4-hour bars in here, but it's been purely buying volume almost, even when looking at the intrabar data. So I don't know, maybe this is still a decent spot to, try a crazy long, but your stop is probably going to be all the way down here. If you want any sort of like logical positioning for your reward to risk. So on this, I think I'd wait to see what happens and see what develops. There's no actions being told for us to take.
Yeah.
Obviously, the best spot would be entering down here, which is like 40% away. And maybe I'd look at a different time frame.
And this brings up a good point because people are asking, does this indicator replace everything that you may want to use in trading? So obviously it's not the case. And a volume profile really excels. And we're going to teach you this in our masterclass. It really excels if there's actually some volume happening in that price range that we are currently in. If we are at an historical high or, a price range which we haven't been before, and of course, because of that, not much volume besides the current bar was traded there, the insights from a volume profile, at least at this price level, they are a bit limited. Perhaps at this point, maybe Liquidity IQ with its insights on support and resistance will give you more of a story. But if you are within a contested zone where lots of price action has happened and you can find these imbalances, these biases, where buying and selling happens to some degree, then you can, I think, conclude a bit more. But in this case, it's a bit of an extreme example of, where price is right now in relation of where it has been in the past.
Yeah, and Daniel, when I went in, I would suggest even in those cases, try a smaller time frame. I'm like on the 15-minute here, this story it's telling us here is pretty much, hey, you should probably be selling, right? It's just sell action zone, sell action zone. It's not saying to go long. It's not saying to go short. There's no tier 2 sell, but it's saying, sell if you already have some. But on the 15-minute, when I zoom in, now there's a nearby trade, right? Which is if we do fall down, I'm sure it's gone up so fast, it can very well come down fast. A good spot to buy is going to be around here, 90, 91, tier 2 buy. And there's even some support down here as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks, Nicholas. I'm going to grab back my screen again. So, guys, we are nearing the 90-minute mark of this webinar. We planned it out for just 1 hour, so we are already exceeding our allotted time. But just one quick reminder, actually 2 reminders. This is a limited time offer. So for now, the price is at $9.97 as a special offer. So if you're considering it, go to tradingindicators.com/volume, but don't forget the coupon code volume. This one will be enabled for a little bit, but not unlimited. So this discount will go away eventually. And the second thing I want to stress, so just one more time, if you come on board, you will not be left alone. This is not our style, of course. You will get all the training that you need to take most advantage of these indicators. For example, our invitation to our exclusive live sessions every week, every Tuesday at 12 p.m. The masterclass, which will be very packed, and we'll continue offering this masterclass through multiple sessions until it's all explained in detail. And the other bonus is that you will be invited to our next live trading workshop where we put our money where our mouth is, and you can see us and watch us trade Volume IQ live. With live market with the live of our live account. Right. So think about it, guys. It's been a pleasure. And if we forgot some questions, guys, there's so many questions coming in. Oh my God. The last thing that I would like to mention is that you can always, and maybe we can cover one or two more questions, but you can always reach out to us as well at tradingindicators.com. That's our homepage. Go to the main menu, click on the contact item in there. This will open up a contact form. Put your question there, and it will go straight to my inbox and Niklas' inbox and Homer's inbox, and we will make sure to get to your question as soon as we can. So that's always an option. And let me just quickly have one more question here, and I apologize if I overlooked a few. There was just too many. And Niklas, did you read Alexis's question real quick? Oh, it's about the logic of how to interpret a tier 1 and tier 2. Alex, I think this is best explained with a bit more contextual information during our masterclass. It's because, there's a bit of nuance involved, and explaining it right now without having, proper information on the slides, it might be a bit difficult and also a bit dry. So please hold on for this until we have the masterclass next Friday. Was it Friday? Yeah, next Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. All right. So, okay. Alex says, perfect. Great. Okay, guys. So with that, I thank you all for attending. I hope you found this session useful. Even if you don't come on board with Volume IQ, I hope you found our take on volume profiles in general educational. I always try to make our sessions educational, and of course, showcase our products, but hopefully you found it interesting to follow. And thanks so much for being here. And I already look forward to our next session, be it on one of our other webinars, or perhaps if you come on board at our live sessions on Tuesdays, or perhaps the live trading session next week. Also, Niklas, thank you so much for your thorough explanation, very detailed. And of course, guys, one last thing, this session was recorded, and the link for the recording will be sent out to you shortly after this webinar. So please look out for that. All right, guys, so that's it. Thank you so much. Have a great evening or great night in case of Mark. I know Mark comes, I believe, from Switzerland. Have a great night there. It's late, and enjoy your evening. Until later. Bye, guys.